My dear seeker, to win friends and influence others is not a mere art of persuasion, but a sacred dance of the psyche, where the ego meets the other in the mirror of the collective unconscious. True connection arises not from manipulation, but from the soul's recognition of itself in another. Let us explore this path through the lens of individuation, for in understanding the self, you forge bonds that endure and inspire. The mirror of the self to win a friend, you must first befriend yourself. Not merely in the way of affirmation, but in the way of revelation, for every soul you encounter is a mirror, not of what you wish to be, but of who you are. The other does not simply walk beside you, they reflect you. This is one of the greatest and most unsettling truths of the psyche. We are not drawn to others by accident. The people we are enchanted by or repelled by are often carriers of our own unconscious material. In Jungian terms, they reflect our anima or animus, the inner feminine or masculine within, or our shadow, the disowned aspects of our personality. What you fall in love with in another may be what you've abandoned in yourself. What you despise may be what you secretly fear resides within. Consider this. You meet someone radiant with creativity, spontaneity, or passion. You feel magnetized, as if they've awakened something ancient inside you. That's not mere chemistry, it's your inner archetype reaching out. The unconscious is saying, "This is yours too, you have only forgotten." And in the same breath, when you find someone arrogant, needy, or rigid, and you react with disproportionate frustration, it is the shadow knocking, reminding you, this too is a part of you. Most remain blind to this mirror. They blame, idolize, judge, or chase. They fail to pause and ask the only question that leads to transformation: what is this person showing me about myself? This single inquiry is the beginning of self-awareness, and therefore the beginning of authentic relationship. When we do not know ourselves, we enter into relationships as beggars, seeking completion from the other. We fall into codependency, projection, and misunderstanding. But when we turn inward and begin the long, often painful work of integration, of facing our shadow, listening to our inner voice, claiming both light and darkness, we come into relationship no longer as fragments, but as whole beings. This is the mirror of the self, the archetype of totality. It draws us into union, not with another, but with our own deepest nature, and in that union we meet others not with need, but with presence. Not with masks, but with truth, and it is only in this space, where illusion falls away, that true friendship is born. So, to win a friend, start not with charm, but with courage. Dare to look into the mirror of the other. Dare to see yourself there, and ask, what do I admire that I have not lived? What do I reject that I have not forgiven? What in them awakens what is dormant in me? For when you know yourself, you will stop asking others to carry your unlived life. You will relate soul to soul, and then, only then, will the bond be real, the friendship enduring, the connection sacred. The shadows roll in conflict in the terrain of human relationship. Nothing distorts perception more profoundly than the unrecognized shadow. The shadow is not evil in itself. It is simply the part of you that you cannot or will not see. It is composed of what you have repressed, denied, or forgotten. Your envy, rage, pride, neediness, and even your brilliance. And yet, when you look at another and react with disgust, contempt, or judgment, it is often not because of who they are, but because they stir what you have buried in yourself. Criticism, as Dale Carnegie wisely noted, rarely changes others, but it always reveals something about ourselves. When you feel the compulsion to condemn someone's laziness, arrogance, or need for control, pause. Ask not what they did wrong. Ask instead, What part of me is threatened by this? What am I seeing that I have not accepted in myself? This is the first gesture of inner maturity. The recognition that outer conflict is often a mirror of inner division. Projection is the psyche's way of defending against what it cannot yet face. Instead of recognizing our inner flaws, we cast them out into the world. We make others the carriers of our unlived lives. The critical boss may represent your own fear of inadequacy. The irritating friend may hold a spontaneity or chaos your ordered life has exiled. The partner whose need for attention overwhelms you may reflect your own disowned longing to be seen. When you judge another, it is as if your unconscious whispers, "Look here, this is you." But most recoil from this insight. The ego resists owning the shadow. It prefers the illusion of moral superiority. It hides behind blame and righteous indignation. Yet this path leads only to isolation, for when you project the shadow outward, you build walls instead of bridges. You push away the very people who could teach you who you are. To win a friend, then, is not merely to master charm or diplomacy. It is to master yourself. Begin with humility. Begin with the awareness that your perception is colored by your wounds, that your irritation might be grief, that your anger might be fear, and that every person you meet holds a piece of your wholeness, if only you would look. When you feel the rising urge to criticize, turn inward, sit in silence with your discomfort. Let it speak. Ask, what in me feels unseen, unloved, or ashamed? In doing so, you reclaim power from projection. You transform judgment into compassion. You see others not as enemies or problems to be fixed, but as fellow travelers on the same arduous path of becoming. This is the alchemy of the shadow, to make what was once despised a doorway to love. Only then, when you stop warring with yourself, will you stop wounding others. And in that sacred moment of inner reconciliation, you may find not just peace, but the rarest gift of all, a true friend. Genuine appreciation as Anima/Animus integration to truly appreciate another is not that opens, that surrenders. Dale Carnegie spoke of listening as a means to influence, however, might call it a sacred right, a descent into the soul of the other. When you listen with your whole being, you do not merely hear words. You become the vessel into which another human being pours their psyche. You make yourself a mirror, reflecting not the face they show the world, but the silent figures who dwell in their depths. The unconscious speaks not in straight lines, but in spirals, in symbols, metaphors, dreams, and fragments. A person's story is never just their story. It is an echo from their childhood, a whisper from an archetype, a projection of an inner drama they may not yet see. When you listen without interruption or agenda, you allow those hidden threads to rise to the surface. This is what it means to become a container, a temenos, a sacred space where the psyche can unfold. Consider this. When someone shares a sorrow or longing, what if you heard not just their voice, but the voice of their inner child? What if their complaint concealed a shadow yearning to be acknowledged? What if their admiration pointed to a part of their soul they have not yet claimed? Listening, then, is not passive. It is a form of psychic attunement. You lean not just with your ears, but with your soul. You pay attention not just to content, but to tone, gesture, silence. You listen for what is not said, for the symbols struggling to be born beneath the surface of casual speech, often worked by listening to dreams, and a conversation, too, can be a kind of waking dream. The words may be rational, but beneath them flows a river of unconscious material, fear, yearning, ancestral memory, unspoken grief. To listen in this way is to love without possession. It is to be present without control. And it is deeply healing for the one who is heard and for the one who hears. When you listen with reverence, something shifts, defenses drop, masks melt. The other feels seen, not for who they pretend to be, but for who they are becoming. And in that moment of soul contact, a sacred bond is formed. This is the alchemy of connection, not forged through persuasion or performance, but through presence. To influence someone, listen to the symbols beneath their speech. To be loved, become the silence that holds another's story, for in that space of deep listening, the unconscious speaks, and both souls awaken. The power of empathy is not a trick of the mind, but a movement of the soul. It is not about understanding another from a distance. It is about entering the shared field of suffering, desire, and hope that binds us all. Dale Carnegie taught that empathy wins hearts. Carl Jung would go further. Empathy dissolves the illusion of separateness and reveals the architecture of the collective unconscious. When you look into another's eyes and truly see them, not their mask, not their role, but their humanness, you are touching something eternal. Beneath every face lies the archetypal drama of the human condition. The lover longing to be held, the child aching to be seen, the warrior protecting a hidden wound. These are not just stories. They are psychic blueprints woven into the very fabric of our being. To empathize is to step into this inner landscape, but the path is not easy. It asks you to descend into your own pain first. You cannot feel another's grief unless you have met your own. You cannot understand their fear unless you have walked through your own night. And you cannot honor their story if you are still at war with your own. This is why empathy, in Jungian terms, is an alchemical act. When you allow your own wounds to soften you rather than harden you, you transform them. The scar becomes a doorway. The pain becomes a bridge. To practice empathy, begin here. Recall a moment when you were misunderstood, dismissed, or abandoned. Let yourself feel it, not to suffer, but to remember. Then, as someone speaks their truth, allow your heart to stay open. Listen not to respond, but to resonate. This resonance is the music of the collective unconscious. You are not just two people in conversation. You are two souls remembering that they were never truly separate. And yet, empathy is not collapse. It is not merging into the other or rescuing them from their darkness. It is standing beside them, rooted in your own center, while saying with your presence, I see you, I feel you, you are not alone. In this way, empathy aligns you with the self, not the ego, not the persona, but the deep center of the psyche that seeks wholeness. The self does not judge, does not rush, does not fix. It embraces, it holds. It understands. Empathy is how the self meets the world. It is how we touch the sacred in the everyday, to win a friend, to heal a wound, to change a life. Begin not with advice, but with presence. For when you meet another in their truth, you remind them of their worth. And in doing so, you remember your own. This is the power of empathy, not sentiment, but soul. The persona's mask and authenticity in every social interaction. We wear a mask. Jung called this mask the persona, the image we craft to meet the expectations of the world. It is not inherently false. In fact, it is necessary. The persona allows us to function in society, to play roles, to communicate within shared structures. But when the persona becomes too rigid, when we begin to believe we are the mask, it becomes a prison, not a bridge. Dale Carnegie suggested that making others feel important is the key to influence. And yet, how we go about this makes all the difference. Do we flatter from behind a polished mask, or do we recognize the soul behind the eyes of the other because we've met our own? The danger of the persona lies in its seduction. It can become a costume of charm, of competence, of likability, but people sense when they are being spoken to by a mask rather than a heart. Authenticity is not loud or self-promoting. It is quiet, rooted, and deeply human. It is the voice of the self, not the ego's performance. True influence, then, is not manipulation. It is presence. It is the ability to stand in your own truth, shadow and all, without needing to impress. It is the rare courage to show up without armor. To make others feel important authentically is to see them, not for their status, their achievements, or how they serve your agenda, but for their humanness, their striving, their sacred vulnerability. You recognize their worth not because it flatters your persona, but because yourself sees their self, and the self does not lie. But how do we reach this level of honesty? We must begin with ourselves. We must meet our own shadow, the envy we hide, the fear we deny, the longing we repress. We must engage the anima or animus, that contrasexual part of the soul that holds our neglected feeling or rational capacities. This is the inner work of individuation, and only through it can we strip the mask without shame. When we've made peace with our contradictions, we no longer need to pretend. We no longer posture or perform. And in this space of inner congruence, something miraculous happens. Others begin to drop their masks too. We give them permission, not with our words, but with our presence. This is how influence becomes intimacy. So when you next make someone feel important, pause, ask yourself, am I speaking from my persona or from my soul? Let your compliments arise not from a script, but from a sincere moment of recognition. Let your praise be an act of soul, seeing the persona is a tool, not a truth. Authenticity begins when you remember that, and every time you choose the self over the mask, you don't just influence a person. You awaken a deeper connection, one forged not in performance, but in presence. The archetype of the leader true leadership is not born of control or charisma. It is born of alignment with a deeper truth. Dale Carnegie encouraged inspiring enthusiasm in others as a means of influence, but from the lens of Jungian psychology, this inspiration flows not from manipulation, but from the activation of an archetype, the hero. The hero archetype lives within each of us. It is the part of the psyche that seeks to transcend limitation, to forge meaning from adversity, and to carry the fire of vision through the unknown. When the hero awakens, it does not merely seek achievement. It seeks transformation, first of the self and then of others through the example of inner authenticity. The hero is not the ego inflated. It is the ego in service to the self. When you speak from this place, when your words and actions rise from genuine conviction, you touch something archetypal in others. You stir not only their minds but their souls. You awaken what Jung called the transcendent function, the inner bridge between who they are and who they are becoming. People follow not because they are coerced, but because they recognize something eternal in your presence. It is not your certainty that draws them. It is your courage to walk into the unknown. It is your willingness to face your own shadow that gives them strength to confront theirs. But many fail to lead because they mistake leadership for dominance. They chase authority, forgetting that the deepest form of leadership is service to a calling greater than the self. Jung warned that when the hero becomes inflated, when it forgets its place within the greater structure of the psyche, it falls into the trap of the pure eterness, the eternal youth, seeking glory without responsibility. To truly embody the hero archetype, you must first ask, what vision grips me? What truth burns in me so fiercely that I must give it voice, not for applause, but because I cannot remain silent? This passion, when rooted in the self, becomes a guiding light. It infuses your presence with clarity and vitality. Others feel this, even if they cannot name it. They are drawn not to your perfection, but to your purpose. As we explored in the spiritual journey of awakening, the hero's path is not linear. It is a spiral, full of descent, confrontation, and return. The most powerful leaders are those who have fallen, who have wrestled with doubt, and who rise not unscathed but transformed. To lead is to carry a torch into the dark, not to eliminate the darkness for others, but to show them that it can be walked through. So inspire, yes, but inspire through embodiment. Let your enthusiasm arise not from strategy, but from soul. Let your leadership be a mythic invitation for others to become more of who they already are. For in every heart lies a sleeping hero waiting for the call. Handling conflict with consciousness. Conflict, though often feared or avoided, is one of the most potent mirrors of the unconscious. Dale Carnegie wisely advised to steer clear of arguments, recognizing that no one wins when egos collide. But Carl Jung would invite us deeper, to see conflict not as an obstacle, but as a revelation, a psychic eruption revealing what lies hidden within. In every sharp word or heated disagreement, there is usually more at play than the surface issue. Jung taught that behind most interpersonal conflicts are complexes, clusters of emotional experiences, often rooted in early life, that live autonomously in the unconscious. These complexes wait silently until provoked, then rise with disproportionate intensity. You may feel an unexpected wave of defensiveness, rage, or sorrow, but in truth, it is not the other person you are fighting. It is a memory, a wound, a voice from the past that has found a stage in the present. When a conflict arises, the spiritually conscious individual does not rush to defend, but instead pauses and reflects. What in me is being touched? What ancient story is trying to be heard? This is the beginning of psychic responsibility, the moment when you stop projecting your pain and begin integrating it. Jung warned that what we do not make conscious appears in our lives as fate. When we are unconscious of our complexes, we become entangled in repetitive drama. We argue not to understand, but to be seen, validated, or avenged for past hurts. True transformation comes when we break this cycle, turning conflict into a crucible for self-awareness. Consider how often people defend a position not because it's rational, but because it threatens their identity or wounds a hidden insecurity. When we understand this, we can approach disagreements not as battles to win, but as opportunities to listen, with empathy and with symbolic insight. This does not mean we avoid truth or become passive. On the contrary, it requires great strength to hold your ground and your inner gaze at once. It means responding rather than reacting. It means learning to say, "This hurt me," rather than "You are wrong." It means recognizing that in every argument, two unconscious histories are colliding, and that healing begins when even one person chooses to bring light to their own. Carnegie's advice to avoid argument becomes a profound spiritual practice when viewed through Jung's lens. It is not about people pleasing, but about staying rooted in self while navigating relationship. It is the art of staying centered when the unconscious storms rise. To handle conflict with consciousness is to treat it as a symbolic encounter, one that asks not just for resolution, but for insight. The person who triggers you may well be your greatest teacher, sent not to destroy your peace, but to reveal where it was never whole to begin with. So next time conflict emerges, do not flee or fight blindly. Pause, listen, ask, what wants to be healed here? In this space, you transform confrontation into connection, and the world begins to mirror your inner peace. The alchemy of encouragement to truly influence another human being is to become, In Jung's symbolic language, an alchemist, not one who manipulates, but one who patiently awakens hidden gold from base matter. Dale Carnegie's wisdom to encourage improvement is not about cheerleading or offering hollow praise. It is a sacred act of mirroring another's potential, gently calling forth their deeper self. In Jungian psychology, the self is not just the center of our being, but the totality, the fullest version of who we are capable of becoming. Encouragement, when authentic, acts as a psychic mirror that reflects this latent wholeness back to the other. It is not manipulation, it is recognition. Carnegie taught that praise should be sincere, specific, and grounded in truth. Jung would take it further. Encouragement is transformative when it speaks not merely to what the person has done, but to what they can become. It is the art of speaking not to someone's current persona, but to the divine spark still forming in their unconscious. The alchemist, after all, does not force transformation. They provide the container, the vas hermeticum, within which change occurs through time, pressure, and presence. In human terms, this means creating safe psychic space where another person feels seen, not judged. It is in this vessel of acceptance that shame can melt and the gold of potential can emerge. Consider how rare it is to be truly encouraged in a world that thrives on comparison. Most people carry deep doubts about their worth. A single moment of authentic encouragement, one person seeing through the defenses to the soul, can alter a life's direction. Not because of ego inflation, but because something long forgotten is remembered. I matter, I can grow, I am capable of becoming. This is why in your relationships, be they professional, personal, or passing, you should practice active imagination. See the other not just as they are, but as they could be if they embodied their highest archetype. Speak to that image, and your words become not just advice, but medicine. When you affirm someone's courage, creativity, or kindness, you summon those dormant forces to the surface. You awaken what was asleep. The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents, but encouragement is a form of resurrection. It revives unlived potential in them and in you. To encourage another is to take part in a divine task, to be the voice they never had, the eye that finally sees. When you choose to see someone's self beneath their shadow, you don't just influence them, you help liberate them. That, more than persuasion or power, is the true alchemy of connection.